Hey everyone, we're going live right now on YouTube. And I just realized I don't even have my headset on right now, which is kind of funny. Wonder where it is. Oh, there it is. It's hanging up where it goes. So this is just me getting ready for the podcast. We're going to do a live recording today, as we've been doing just about every Wednesday when we can. And I'm hitting it a bit early today because we have Unloosed the Goose this evening. Yep. Unloosed the Goose is recording at 7:30 tonight. And I wanted to get going on the installation of my roaster floor. And I have a lot of orders in, which is great. It's Coffee of the Month week. So, so we're starting the live stream a little early today. And for those of you who have podcasts at home, what I'm doing in the background right now in order to support this is I have YouTube going on one screen on a monitor here, and you're here, right? And I have GarageBand, and I have them shrunk so they're half and half on the screen. And I have my introduction Riley loop, like that my neighbor's singing. That's set up as a loop. And so I can just open the loop thing, drag and drop it. It's really super easy. And I always set it up so that I have saved the file as its own name so that at least something is saved if we have a big old crash. Now, and then I have YouTube on the side here, and I can see that you're in there and that sort of thing. And then I have podcast notes, show notes on my other monitor where the camera is. That's how I do this. And if I run into trouble along the way, as you've all seen it, you saw the time I got into the big fight with my jacket that was on the chair behind me, right? That time I made a mistake, and I think it stopped recording because I leaned on my keyboard. I leaned on that and it made it stop, which means I usually put my keyboard way far away. It's why I don't type back to you in the chat. But that's what I do to get ready. So before I start the live stream, I've done my show notes, and those become the blog post you see on my website. I've set up the file for GarageBand. I've made sure my mic is working. And then every so often I get on YouTube and you guys are like, you have to restart that. And I'm like, dang it. And then there's a whole new link and it's a big mess on social. But every so often YouTube doesn't like my mic. And it gets all crackly and inny and outy, but it's working fine on GarageBand because I can see it's working fine on GarageBand. So I get that all going, and then we hop on and we start the podcast. And that's what we're doing today because it's a live recording day. It's been quite a big one today with the Kickstart going, kickstarthollowroast.com. I was like, hey, I'm a web developer. I'll just build my own because Kickstarter didn't really like how I structured the campaign. And I was like, well, that's cool. That's their rules. What I'm wanting to do is crowdfunding. So I found a crowdfunding plugin so I could set up my campaign the way I want to. I'll just build a website. Famous last words from Nicole were, I'll just build a website. Yeah. Let's just say we'll talk about it in the show today, but there's been a number of things. However, the beta launch is today. I could have beta launched it this morning. It wasn't looking very good. And I talked to another web developer friend of mine, and we decided before we beta launch it this afternoon, he was going to go through and we were going to use a different theme than the one that came with the plugin for the crowdfunding website, and see if we can just make the theme that we both like to work in, which is Enfold, make it look a lot better, because bullets aren't displaying and all this other weird formatting's happening, and it's coming from the theme, not the plugin, or some of it's coming anyway. It's a big upside down mess. So today we're going to start the podcast, and then if I see questions on YouTube I can work in, guys, I will do my best to work them in. I will stay after like I did last week and answer any questions or have the discussion with you. And I'm going to mention that it's live on the show as well. So with that, let's get started. Well, welcome everyone to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you want to live on your terms. Today is Wednesday, September 9th, 2020. Yep, it's still 2020, although it is going fast. We're in September. Christmas is almost here. Like, we're literally finalizing our Christmas stuff at Hollow Roast Coffee so we can get it all out on the website. And that means the year is almost over. So this is episode 344 of Living Free in Tennessee. And today I'm starting a series of episodes about how to handle waste on your homestead, starting with the easiest one to deal with, which is livestock waste. And the reason I wanted to do this is, well, we're dealing with livestock waste right now, But it actually brings up an interesting thing about when you do live on a homestead. So you can live on a homestead with land, right? Or you can take the homesteading philosophy into your life in the city. And when you have a little less space, waste is handled differently. So I'm going to talk about this from the perspective of living on the 3-acre homestead with the terrain I have. And I'm hoping it'll open up a dialogue about how we work through our waste issues. And it's something I really like about being on a homestead is you have a lot of opportunity to handle your waste a little bit more responsibly than when we're all crammed into one big old city building together, right? Okay. Also, it's Holler Hat Wednesday. Where is she and who is she with? As usual, do I have that picture up on Instagram, YouTubers? No, I don't, but I will right after the show. I know exactly what it is. It's so funny. I keep doing that. I need a checklist over here. It's like put Holler Hat Wednesday up, then do the live stream. I always do it the other way. Anyway, we'll start the recording again. And as many of you know, every other week we do a Holler live stream, neighbor live stream on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. And that is happening this week. We have somebody new in town that you can come check out. We already have the link for that in the show notes right now. Or if you go to our YouTube channel, it's there saying it's going to stream Thursday night. Finally, Unloose the Goose. So part of why I am recording this early for those of you who are watching me record it live is that Unloose the Goose records tonight. It records every Wednesday. And what I've figured out is if I'm recording my podcast right up against the Unloose the Goose start time, it's a real bugaboo. And so I decided I needed to start doing my show notes a little early, like the day before, so that I can get to the computer and to the studio, start recording, get that all out, have time to go, maybe meditate, take a little bit of a walk somewhere so that when I'm on Unloose the Goose, I'm not feeling all frantic. Because last week it was a 4 p.m. start time. Holy cow. I literally finished recording my podcast, 5-minute break, Unloose the Goose. It was bad. It was bad. And that was, not the best mental state to go into another podcast recording. You need to be there when you're doing that. So Unloose the Goose tonight, though, is at 7:30 Central Time. We will be live streaming it on the Unloose the Goose YouTube channel. And if you ever want to know where that link is, if you go to unloosethegoose.com/live stream, we drop the link in there when we start the YouTube live stream so that you can see it. And the reason we have not figured out how to schedule a Zoom recording that's going to be a live stream on YouTube and get you that link until we're actually live on YouTube. So there's a little bit of a delay before we get you that link, but it does update on that website, or you can just go to the YouTube page and hit refresh until it comes up there. I do have a link to unloosethegoose.com/live stream in the show notes. Finally, if you want to email feedback to me or Stump the Sauce questions, of which I don't have any, and if I didn't answer yours, resend it because somehow I lost it. You could do that, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com, or go to livingfreeintennessee.com, click on contact, and those go to me. So first segment is Stump the Sauce. No, we have nothing. I got no stumps, guys. You got to give me stumps. It's no fun when I don't have stumps around here. Other people don't like stumps. They like grind them down and light them on fire and stuff. But I like Stump the Sauces. It makes for a much more interesting Wednesday. That's okay, though, because Allie came through this week. So we have next segment, Tales from the Booze Whisperette. Allie had a question from Dory about what to do when you have whiskey and ginger and kind of want to have a whiskey drink, but you don't really like whiskey. So Allie put together a great segment about that in answer to Dory. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Allie. See, now what you get to watch on YouTube is me going Finder into my LFTN folder, which of when you're on camera, things take longer. They don't really take longer, but you think they take longer because you're on camera. But what's interesting about my Finder right now is it's in reverse alphabetical order, which it never is. HIJKLMNOP. Okay, there we go. So, what just happened? Oh, and then you do clumsy things on camera because sometimes you get a little nervous and you accidentally open up episode 341 and we're really on 344. And the good thing is before I started all of this, I was smart and I saved episode 344, so I wouldn't mess myself up, because the other thing about recording on YouTube and on GarageBand is sometimes you end up with problems. So back to Finder. Booze, Whisperette, Ginger and Whiskey. This is a really good segment. I listened to it this morning. Very nice by Allie. Okay. Now, and then what I do is I play. I'm like, I say things. Hey, LFTN community. There she is. Okay. And then she's way quieter than I am. So she gets turned up. She also recorded in stereo. Fancy. Allie, that was fancy. Okay. And then because you're on the live stream, you don't get to hear her segment. But it's a really awesome whiskey ginger drink. That's all I'm going to say. It's probably worth downloading the podcast just to hear that segment. I'll see if I can figure out a good way to get the YouTubers to be able to hear this in the future. Okay, now I hit record again, and boom. It's recording on the wrong track. Stop. It's also recording not in stereo. Okay, we're going to do this again. Excellent advice from the Booze Whisperer. That's one I will really like to try. I love whiskey, unlike Dory. Dory, I don't understand how you can't like whiskey. Does that mean we need to stock vodka when you're here? You're going to have to let me know, because you are overdue for a visit, Dory. Anyway, I hope you guys are liking this new segment. We need more questions for the Booze Whisperette, so send them in, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. Next up is What's Up in the Garden. We are resetting everything right now. We're not as active as I'd like to be in that, but that's because I've been busy building the website for the Kickstart hollowroast.com project, and not outside resetting the gardens, but Tactical has been hitting some things, and somebody is in town this week who can help. So I think we'll get it done probably by the end of the weekend. My original goal was by the end of last weekend. And by resetting everything, I mean, we're ripping everything out except for the things like my Cushaw squash and my sweet potatoes and stuff like that doesn't need to be ripped out. But the squash, like the summer squash, is done. The green beans are done. My reseeding in August did not go well. My beet reseeding did not go well. So we're ripping all of that out and preparing beds for a couple of things. One, garlic is going to go in October. And so if we get the beds prepared now, then the garlic planting in October is easier. And we can take some time to let the duck poop kind of percolate so it's not hot, basically, for the garlic. And we can prepare the spring. So some of these are just beds that we're going to use in the spring when we plant in the ground in the spring. So that'll be nice. I can also still put Egyptian walking onions out and some other things like that, as well as a round of Hail Mary seeds. So things that, you know, like beets and carrots and stuff like that they can kind of go into winter fairly well, can go in the ground still. And if you're really feeling jiggy and you have extra seeds, you can put bush beans in, which mature fairly quickly, or pole beans, and hope they don't get frosted out, because the minute it gets cold, they're frosted out. We usually get frosted mid to late October, which means there's not enough time for 45 days really from germination, because it takes them a few days to germinate. You can speed that up by soaking them before you put them out. But I'm just saying, like, it's Hail Mary seeds, and if they grow, they grow. We can do row cover and that sort of thing, but if they don't grow, it's okay. I don't mind doing Hail Mary seeds because it's like $5 and it's a risk, and sometimes something does well and it brings you more than $5 of value. Plus, in my case, I already have the seeds, and seeds do not get better with time. Seeds get worse with time. And, you know, I don't really worry about storing tomato seeds for years or pepper seeds for years. The germination rate goes down. But for things like lettuce and that sort of thing, it dramatically drops to store those seeds, even if you store them really well. And so you need to think about that. If you're establishing a lifestyle where you want to grow your plants and have seeds all the time and not have to be dependent on buying the seeds, which I don't really know what that's like, because the problem is I just really like buying seeds and there's always something different to try. But I do build it into my life that I collect the seeds. If you're storing a seed bank, and somebody asked this on the Middle Tennessee Homesteaders group, how do you store your seed bank? I store mine in mason jars in a dark, cool place. Sometimes they're just in packets. And I don't really fuss with them in the freezer or something unless they need to be stratified that way. which, like a stratification. Some seeds need to go through a certain amount of freezing in order for them to germinate well. For example, the chestnut from the chestnut tree needs to be stratified, I think, for 30 or 45 days. And that means it doesn't need to be freezing. It needs to be in the fridge. But in that way, it tells it, oh, you've gone through a winter, now you can germinate. And that's part of what's programmed into that seed. So unless it needs something like that, I just store them in a cool, dark place and use them again the next year and then collect the seeds the next year. That's how I store my seed bank. I don't employ a strategy of storing seeds for 5 or 10 years in case I need them in the future. Because to me, that doesn't make sense. Then you may get 10 years from now, find out you did it wrong and actually need those seeds, and then they don't work. So my approach to the seed bank is it's an annual effort. And I, because of that, choose carefully what I want to save. Okay, with that, it's time for the main topic of today's show, handling waste on the homestead. Yes, today's show is about shit. You joined it. That's what you get to hear about. Homesteading gives you a great opportunity, I think, to reduce the waste impact of your family, of yourself, and of your property. And it's because that's how homesteads are built, right? We're built to get as much value from the land as possible. And anytime we have waste that we ship off of our homestead, we are potentially sending away something that could bring value back into the homestead. So just the very culture of how a homestead is set up is to optimize waste impact. Now, this is true in theory. This may not always be true in execution on a homestead. It really depends how you design your homestead. But land absorbs and processes waste naturally. If I take a dump on the ground, it will eventually dissipate because of the rain and be absorbed into the land and eventually provide some nutrient for some plants, right? And then grow back up. If I take 450 million dumps in the same place on the ground, it will just make it so nothing grows there. So the cool thing about a homestead is if you have an actual homestead with some land, you have more of nature that you can work with to develop systems where it's that natural cycle that's meant to happen. And that's kind of cool. When you cram people densely into one tiny little postage stamp piece of land, that's when you really have a waste problem. We do not have a waste problem here. We have a waste process. And that's the difference between a homestead with land and dense living. And one of the things I have not understood about so-called smart growth over the years is that they completely ignore the environmental impact of forced density. In fact, when you bring the question up, they try to make up something about why it's more environmentally friendly, but you have to ship everything in. You have to deal with all of the waste, and you need land in order to absorb that, right? Even if you're putting it through complex high-tech processing, you still needs to go somewhere. So one of the things I love about homestead living is that it's a natural cycle rather than a smelly, disgusting landfill or a ship full of garbage headed to China, because apparently it's okay to send our garbage offshore and dump it in the ocean, or send our garbage to other countries, but we can't actually deal with it here. No, that doesn't make sense. And I think the more you produce on site that you're consuming, the less waste is created to begin with through packaging and so forth. But packaging is also not evil. Packaging is required to transport something from one place to another. So this is not an anti-packaging conversation I'm having here. But it is something that bothers me about the environmental movement is that I see genuine environmentalists who care about the environment. And I see those people pulled into the political action environmentalism movement, which does not make decisions based on what actually helps the environment. They make decisions based on what actions they can take and when, how they can get more people to support their movement. And it's all based in the emotional environmental impact. And it might even sometimes do something good. But when you step back and say, these are the principles we have for environmentalism, and one of them is about controlling how and where people live. And then you look at, at the impact we're having on third world countries that are, I mean, third world countries have gone a great distance in the last 50 years, going from impoverished to less impoverished in many, many cases. What research says is that as a country gains prosperity, people start caring about the environment they're living in because they have space to do that. It's no longer just like, do I have enough food, right? Do I have enough water? They go from that subsistence living to looking around and saying, well, maybe I don't want all this garbage around me. Maybe I want something nice. And as countries become more prosperous, they tend to care more about the environment and take care of it more. And so pursuing policies that force people into and keep people in poverty, like smart growth and land use planning policies, because that is what they do, right? They say they don't do that, but they do that. You end up doing the opposite of what you wanted to do when you keep people in poverty. And I think it's hard for people to have these conversations. Like, somebody's going to hear me say this, they're going to get all pissed because they have bought into the indoctrination of the political action environmentalism group, right? And it's not that people in those movements aren't passionate. It's that they're buying into a narrative without looking deeper. And I think we as responsible adults need to start looking deeper into all of these things, including our own assumptions about liberty and freedom and anarchism and agorism. We need to question it. We need to question it because we might be wrong too, right? And if we all stop questioning things and just buy into the rhetoric, if our goal is to have a better environment around us, then we should ask the question, how do we do that? Not what does some expert say we need to do? Because the experts are wrong a lot. And we've seen that a lot this year. Okay, so today I'm taking the first bite out of handling waste on the homestead. And I'm going to come at this confessing that I would like to do more than I have been able to accomplish so far on my homestead in this regard. But it is a core principle of how I want to develop my homestead over time. And so I'll be talking about different waste concepts, including packaging is going to be one of them, and ways to reduce that on the homestead. And potentially, if you're not on the homestead, but with the homestead mentality where you live now. But I needed an easy topic today, so I'm going to start with animal waste, because animal waste to a homesteader is a gift. It's a gift. We want animal poop. That's what we want. Why do we want it? Because we want to grow plants and it fertilizes plants. But what about the human animal? So that's the first thing. When you get to a homestead or anywhere, where does your waste go that you create? And how do you handle it? If you're buying a bare piece of land, you can do whatever you want. And that's when you have to decide, how much work do I want to put in? Am I going to reuse it without getting skeezed out as fertilizer? And what are my other alternatives and what impact does that have? Right? It's both budgetarily and on the environment. In Tennessee, and this is my state, you have two options. One is a septic system that is inspected and approved by the county health department. To humanure with a approved means of composting it. And then your gray water system has to basically be a septic system. So humanure is basically, you go into something, you go into a composting toilet of some sort, and there are different kinds. Some of them dry it out and divert the nitrogen from your pee somewhere else. Some of them you go into wood chips and cover it with wood chips. Some of them have a pit you can crank. I saw one in Sweden that automated all of that, and it was kind of cool. And they had grow beds at the very end of the system. You can go to YouTube and figure. I might have to go find that link actually, but It's just a way where you treat your waste as if you are an animal on your homestead, and you compost it for 3 years is basically the cycle, and then they say that everything's out of there, and it is that could hurt you if you use it in your gardens, and then you can grow things again with it. Most people I know who use human manure as fertilizer use it on things like trees and shrubs and not the kitchen garden, right? So they'll use it to fertilize different things, but it is fertility. Your other option here with the septic system, it requires an outside person to come and pump and haul it off somewhere, and then it gets treated like sewage. So the septic option, you are getting some of that fertility back into the land through the drain field, which takes the liquids out, and then, it's fertile. It's, you're putting nitrogen back into your system that way. But the solids accumulate in your septic system, and every so often somebody needs to come out and take those solids away. That day does not smell very good, just in case you've never experienced it. It's not terrible, but yeah, it is dealing with waste. So that's a decision you can make. That's how here you deal with human waste. You could always, live somewhere and dig cat holes, but to me, that's a lot of work to go dig a new hole somewhere else every time you have to go number two. Then what if you have diarrhea? Then you have to dig lots of holes all in one day, right? So I think it is good to think about that. We use composting outhouses here at the Holler Homestead. So we use human manure methods in those. We have a place where you have privacy and you can go, and then you cover it with wood chips, and then we compost that. Do I use it back in my garden? No, but I haven't had it for 3 years yet. When it does get used again, it will be used on trees and such. I'm one of the trees and shrubs people. Poultry waste. I have been using the deep litter method on the poultry for years. And right now, and what made me think of this show was we are right at the time where it's time, like the deep litter method is you let them poop in their coop. And we close ours in a coop at night for safety reasons. It's ducks for us right now, not chickens. And then you throw pine chips or whatever on top of where their poop, and it just starts composting down, and that really can keep smell down. Right now it's not keeping smell down, which is my indication that it is time to scoop it out and start with a fresh layer of pine chips. Well, the cool thing is you get, I get maybe 4 or 5 55-gallon drums of duck poopy pine chips out of that deal. In fact, some of it's where they always hang out at night. It's more like dirt and less like pine chips. It's gone a lot faster. And that, my friends, is how we get our garden beds ready for spring. So the thing about poultry waste is you need to let it compost before you plant plants in it, or it's hot. It's got too much nitrogen. It burns them. Okay. Or it kills them. You can kill plants this way. And so what you want to do is what I do. Some people will put it through a compost bin and turn it and all that. I'm lazy. So what I do is I take it and I put a big old thick layer of it over a bed I want in the spring. And then I put straw or wood chips over the top of that. And sometimes I even go so far as to put a tarp over it. The reason I do that is because my chickens want to get in there and scratch it up. But there is an issue where you could have... you could have some existing weed seeds in there too, because they can live through the process. But as it gets hot, it will eliminate those seeds, the weed seeds. And, chicken weed seeds usually mean I get a franken squash if one lives, or I get a franken tomato, which is fine by me. I love franken tomatoes. So what I do there is I'll prepare the beds and then wait until next spring to plant them. Well, 30 to 45 days is totally enough for that to be fine. And we're looking at 30 to 45 days till I plant garlic. So this year, what we're doing is we're taking the duck poop, we're making a bed that's going to be the garlic bed. And then towards the end of October, I will end up planting the garlic in that bed. And then I'll put even more mulch on top of it because garlic loves mulch. And this is awesome, guys, because it's just like I don't have to buy fertilizer. I don't have to go buy mulch somewhere. I don't have to buy anything. It's just I fed my ducks. They gave me eggs. I threw pine chips down and I move it up to the garden and boom, happy vegetables. It's that easy. Rabbit waste, same thing, only different. Rabbit and goat waste can be used directly in your garden without composting. They work fine. So my next door neighbor is raising rabbits for meat, and a byproduct he's getting is poop. And that poop is what grew my beets this year. I had like a first successful beets, and I was like, "Hey, I'm putting beet seeds in. Can you bring over some rabbit poop?" And he brought me a bin that was about, 4 gallons of poop, and I worked it into the soil, and then I planted the seeds. And it was the best thing I've ever used for beets. And then my beets ended up awesome this year. So, to the extent I can use rabbit poop, I will use rabbit poop. Goat poop is the same. The way we use goat poop here, though, is that we don't collect it. The only place we can get goat poop is in the barn because she wanders around and poops. And it's just, she's wandering around eating the grass and the weeds, and she's pooping where she goes. And that poop just dissipates back into the ground. Of course, in the barn, we do get a buildup of goat poop and pee and straw. And again, the way we use that is we move it to a garden bed. You can plant straight in that. What I'll end up doing right now this year, though, is waiting because I'm not ready to put some of my later fall plantings in. So goat poop and rabbit poop, same way. Now, if you had a situation where you have a lot of goats, you will end up having a lot of extra goat waste, and you can just build that into any bed you want. Or if you see plants looking sad, you can just put some of that poop around there, and it really helps them. Okay, pig waste. The key to pig waste is to let your pig wander. So if you're able to rotate your pig, like human poop, pig poop just kind of works into the ground, or like dog poop, right? If you have enough space and you can rotate it, it will work. If not, you need to find another option, because what will happen to a pig in a pasture, and this has happened to our pig in our pasture because she's in a pasture and not being rotated at this time, is they poop in the same place. So pigs like to be clean, counter to their reputation, and they will kind of poop in the same place. So it's over there, and that's where the poop is. And if you want to clean that out, and we're getting to the point where I want to clean that out, you want to compost that. What I'm going to do with it is put it in my human manure pile and cover it with wood chips, and it'll be fine. But if you don't have that, you can look into getting a green cone, which is an underground digesting system, or you can just set up a compost bin, or any way that you would handle dog poop, you handle pig poop. And then the other livestock or animal waste on the property we're dealing with are cat poop and dog poop. Our dogs go on walks in the woods and I never see it. The cat poop for me is a problem. So right now what I'm doing, and this is my one export of waste, cat waste is going off property, and I'm looking for solutions for closing that loop as well. I have closed every other loop but the cat poop loop at this point. And we have a septic system. So I use a septic system, but we also use the composting outhouses. So, I think some of you noticed I had a lot of plumbing issues this year, and sometimes it was my black water system, which is my sewage. That may sound really uncomfortable, but when you have composting outhouses, you can go a couple days and you're not as worried about it. So it's having a human manure system in your life, even as a backup. It's a great way to maintain sanitation if the power goes out, and like me, your water requires electricity and you don't have a generator. And if you ever have a problem, you have a backup system. Now, let's apply this to if you live in the city. What do? It's not like you can't put a composting outhouse everywhere, right? Well, what you can do is get a bucket and get wood chips and have a designated closet, or you can just put it in your bathroom. And if you have a sewage problem, or for some reason water stops because there was a hurricane, or there's a lot of things that can happen, you can still use the bucket. You're just going to have to do something with the waste later when you're past the situation. Anyway, waste is a part of everybody's life, right? It's a part of living. If you're alive, you create waste. And it's something that I think has become way too politically charged. And it doesn't really need to be. It's waste. None of us want to live in it, and all of us need to do something with it. It should not be an emotional issue. Most sane people would prefer not to live in a world that functions outside of natural cycles, right? We would love, all of us would love to be able to tap our waste into natural cycles. Maybe not all. There's probably somebody out there who's like, I will throw my garbage wherever I want. Okay, fine. You don't want to. But I think most people do want to function within natural cycles. And how we handle our waste is really a big part of that. Packaging can easily be used in a way that reduces environmental impact, by the way. And so I don't think we need to go on a packaging crusade. I know a lot of the like pop environmental movement has been focused on bags and straws and stuff like that without looking at the big picture, which is kind of an issue. But and that's kind of a crusade against packaging. Meanwhile, you order something from Amazon and like how much does I mean the boxes we get on this property is a good thing you can compost most of those too. And I think as we look around at what we do and what our families do, we see that we are the best stewards of our own waste. So rather than go on a crusade, rather than rail against the machine of dumps and garbage and poop, look at what you're doing. That's how you get lasting change, is if people choose to figure out how to build systems with their waste. We have cycles here that have been going on for 14 years with chicken poop and garden, duck poop and garden, goat poop and garden, rabbit poop. Like that cycle is very easy on a homestead. It's a little less easy in the city, but it's still possible. You can raise rabbits in the city. And if you get their poop, you can put it on your garden. If you have, a city lot with actual beds of some sort that you can grow food in, right? I think the solution is not one solution though, right? It's person by person. You have to figure out how you can do it in a way that's not disgusting or smelly and how you build it into your life without making yourself go crazy. And as I think through the series of waste, I'm starting to think of so many examples of how people have turned what was once waste into a new resource, and they're also able to build a wealthy lifestyle that they want. I want to look into some of those, don't you? Like I know I saw a guy present at the Rogue Food Conference who lived on a farm and wanted to find a way to feed his pigs without spending a bunch of money, and so he figured out that you could get for free or for cheap truckloads of produce that's past its prime at the grocery store. And then he said when the first truck came, most of the produce was fine. So then he sent out like next door or something saying, hey, I've got all this free produce for anybody who wants it. And people who needed food came and got food. And then what was left was really the stuff that was a little past his prime that went to his pigs and made meat. Well, think about what's happening to that waste stream at a grocery store right now, right? It's getting dumped somewhere if somebody's not tapping into it like that. And him doing that ended up creating a bunch of bugaboo and unhappy Department of Making You Sad inspectors because, apparently giving away food's not allowed sometimes. But they figured out a way around that, and now he has this cycle. Well, has he built that into a wealthy lifestyle for himself? Not really, but he does sell his pigs, so it's helping his business, and he's able to help his community be stronger because he's getting them access to fresh food. And then they talk about, well, now that I have this box of tomatoes, I can't eat it all in one day. What did I do? Oh, we'll show you how to can that, right? That's empowering lots of people around him to deal with waste and to become more self-reliant. So I start getting really excited because like that idea came to me as I was just talking about the cycle of poop on the homestead. And I'm like, wow, it'd be really fun to have him on the show, first of all, to talk about that. But then I thought about there's a garbage dump south of Austin that's a wildlife preserve. They have like African animals out there, and their goal has been to create a waste management facility. So this is a city solution that doesn't look bad and doesn't smell bad. And so they figured out how to sort it aggressively and do whatever recycling they can and then flow the rest into the land. And then they're taking care of animals like zebras and stuff on this land. That's kind of cool too. And it's waste. But I mean, wouldn't you want to go tour that place? I have toured it. It's worth it if you're ever down there and they're open it. Anyway, I'm also interested in what ideas you have for like what waste streams should we think about on the homestead next. So if you have some ideas and if you're like, hey, I know this person, or I saw this thing, or I want to figure out what to do about all the extra packaging, I'll tell you what, I have too much packaging and that is something I do want to deal with. Send me an email, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. I hope you liked today's show. If you did, you can support me in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. 2, go to livingfreeintennessee.com, click on membership, and consider becoming a member. It looks like we're going to start a webinar series on cybersecurity. That just happened this morning over on MeWe. So we're going to add that series in there. And I am going to be doing a pressure canning session soon. I may actually wait till I go to California later this month and do it from California in Mom's kitchen, which would be kind of fun. I just need to see if she has a pressure canner, because she might not. And then we'll have to ask around if she doesn't. And COVID's still happening over there. So we need to think about that too. Anyway, that was quite a show. I wanted to give you an update on the Holler Roast Kickstarter too, because I mentioned we were going to do a Kickstarter for Holler Roast. And then I went to Kickstarter, filled out their stuff, and they have certain requirements of every Kickstarter campaign that we don't live up to. And one of them is, like, we got denied, and they told me I could change how I put together my program, and then it would probably pass. So the issue they have is they thought I talked too much about why I'm upgrading my roaster, and instead of that, I am pre-selling coffee and memberships and other things like that in order to fund a roaster expansion so that I can fulfill the orders. And I felt that telling the story of Holler Roast the way it is the best way to explain what I'm doing. And I didn't want to make those changes. So I decided to build a website, kickstarthollerroast.com, and do a crowdfunding project where I can frame our story the way it is rather than reframe it the way somebody else wants me to. And today we are beta launching that site. If you go there right now and see a splash page, which those of you watching the YouTube live stream, you will just see a splash page right now. It's going to be gone later today. Here's what happened. I built the website. I bought the leading plugin for crowdfunding. I installed the plugin and the stupid thing didn't work. And I reached out to their tech support. Their tech support's in a different country, different time zone. And then I was like, screw this. I'm going to try another plugin. Tried another plugin. It worked. But the user interface for it to just support a project was terrible. And so I talked to a friend of mine who I work with who does software. And I said, what do I do about this? And he's like, oh, we'll just fix that plugin for you. And so I sent it off to get fixed. Well, in the meantime, the plugin creator came back and said, hey, we'll fix that for you. And I am writing them back today saying, this is what we did to fix it. In case you want to use that somewhere else. So we got the plugin working, and the plugin is developed to work with specific themes. I was using the theme they wanted, and the site just looks really ugly. Like the Kickstart Holler Roast site, if you don't see the splash page, looks really ugly. So I was on the phone again today, like trying to implement CSS changes, which is code, like website coding, and they weren't taking. And it's because the theme they recommend is kind of a crummy theme. So what we did right before I started recording this is we're just installed Enfold, which is one of the themes I really like to use. And my buddy is working on it today just to try to make it look better so it's more visually appealing. So when I say beta launch, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take that splash screen off at some point. People who've signed up to be notified when that happens will see the beta product. And then if they supporting the Kickstart Holler Roast crowdfunding project, they can. And if something goes wrong, I want them to tell me, like, oh, I was on this computer, this operating system, and it didn't work. And I'll just want to know why, right? Because I've donated so much money to myself in the last week with this, just testing everything to make sure it works. But the minute you launch something, that's when you find extra problems you didn't think about. So I'm beta launching it on purpose and not sending a huge announcement all over the world. And, by the time people hearing this podcast see it, we will have been beta launched for several days. A lot of people are 2 to 3 weeks behind on the podcast. You'll be hearing this and it's up and almost over, right? Unless you saw it somewhere on social or something else. So I won't be saying anything on social. It'll just sort of go live. And then if anybody sees something, they can let me know. Okay. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week. That's the whole adventure. Okay, so we want to talk about composting outhouses and composting toilet systems. I feel like I've done a show on that. Have I done a show on that, or have I not done a show on that? If I haven't done a show on that, we'll do a show on that. I've been exposed to humanure composting toilet systems since I moved out here about 14 years ago. My next door neighbor has one that's more of the traditional. It's like a toilet made out of plastic with a tumbler, and you go and you put wood chips in that, and it has a fan that blows all the moisture out so it won't smell, and it exhausts out the top. And then you use once a day or once a week or however, depending on how much you go. You take the solids out that are dried out or pile, and you finish composting it for 3 years. Keeping the pile going, it's not that hard. You just need it to stay wet enough. So if you're having a dry spell, you will actually water your humanure pile. But here in Tennessee, it's like lately it's just rained and rained and rained. I have another friend who uses what's called the luggable loo method, which is just the 5-gallon bucket. That's what I use in the outhouses. So when I see you on YouTube asking me, interested in learning more about composting toilets, what exactly are you interested in? That's what I'd like to know. What do you want to know? We can talk through how the process works. I can do a tour video, especially if I get 1,000 subscribers, which I'm 400 away from that right now. We can just look at what I have here, or I can go over to my friend's house and I can show you her system. There are lots of things. I got another friend who has one where the waste drops down under the house, and there's a really big tumbler that they crank with the thing, and once a year they take the solids out. From what I understand, and I've talked to a lot of people with different composting solutions, I haven't found anybody who has one of those big ones that needs to be cleaned out once a year that loves that day. And a lot of them say they wish they would have just gone with the smaller built-in option on like a Sunmar or whatever. The Sunmar, I believe, is the brand that a lot of people use. And it's the tumbler is built in. So like your toilet's like this big throne that you climb up on, and then you go and then but it's all in the room that you're in. And then it's a little bit of work every day versus a really bad day once a year. And that's, I think, a decision you have to make. I will look for the video and drop it in the show notes of that one Swedish system that was all, it required a lot less interaction with the poop, basically, which I thought was kind of cool. And I think it's that there, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a house built inside a greenhouse. I think it might also be that house, because there's a big greenhouse and there's a house inside it, which in a northern culture or northern climate really would make sense from a heating standpoint, right? Down here, you'd have to take those panes out because you turn into a giant magnifying glass, right? So anyway, thanks for joining the live stream, guys. And I'm not seeing any other questions, so I think we will end this unless somebody pops up right now and says, "Oh, I have a question," other than composting toilets. Okay, I don't see it. Make it a great week, guys.